Hey y'all, this is Ross Harris from the Bear Mountain Bike Shop in Waco, Texas. We're here with our friends from Pakmule to talk about the basics of setting up your mountain bike. So on my left here, I've got a more basic entry-level hardtail that you might find anywhere on the trails or in your neighborhood or maybe in your garage. So we've got here, the things we're going to be setting up are going to be, we want to make sure, first off, that we have the proper size bike. So bikes come in different frame sizes. Those frame sizes are more or less specific to height ranges. So it's going to be difficult to get a bike to fit you well if you happen to have a bike that is too large or too small for you. But assuming that we have the properly sized bike, the first step we're going to look at is setting our saddle height at the right height. So your saddle is attached to your seat post, and that can telescope within the frame of the bike. And so what you want to do is you want to position that seat so that when your foot is on the pedal, you are getting close to a full extension of your leg, but you are not locking it out at any point in that rotation. This may feel a little bit high for you if you're not used to having your seat at this point. So if you're uncomfortable doing that, feel free to lower it a little bit, but you're just not going to get the most efficiency out of your pedaling if it's lower than that. If you do feel a little tippy when it's at that height, when you come to a stop or when you're getting started, just be standing over that top tube, and that's going to let you put your feet flat on the ground and feel comfortable. The second thing we're going to look at is setting up is where our brake levers and our shifters are positioned. So you want to make sure that when you have your hands on those handlebars, that they are in a comfortable position for your hands to reach. So if you have smaller hands, that may mean you need to shift those towards more of the outside of the bar. If you have larger hands, you may need to shift them away a little bit so you can get the proper grasp on them. But you want to make sure that when your hands are positioned on the brake levers, that you have a solid feel on those so that you can be confident when you're stopping. And the same goes for your shifters. You want to make sure that your thumb or your index finger can get a good placement on those paddles so that you can get good positive shifts when you are riding. The next thing we will talk about is if your bike has a suspension fork on it of any type, there's some adjustment to be made, but especially if you have an air suspension fork. So an air suspension fork just means that you are going to have an air chamber within the fork that you are going to set to your weight when riding. So you'll want to take your body weight. If you're gonna be carrying a lot of stuff on you, add that into the calculation. And then most suspension forks are going to have a recommended air pressure on the side of the stanchion for you to do. Now you're going to need a shock pump to air that up. It's different than just the pump for airing up your tires. If you don't have one of those, any bike shop is going to have one. They'd be more than happy to help you do that. But once you set up that air suspension to your appropriate weight, then you'll want to go out onto the trails, see how it feels, and you can make adjustments from there to take some air away, add some air, adjust your other settings on the fork as well. So that's going to be your basics on a more entry-level bike. Now we're going to move over here to a little bit more of an advanced bike. This is going to be a bike that's got a few more components on it to take into consideration. So your shifting and your brake placement is going to be similar. One difference that this bike has is instead of just a standard seat post, it has what's called a dropper seat post. Now this seat post, when you depress a lever over here, is going to be able to raise and lower. The reason you might want that is for if you are doing some larger descents, it lets you get the seat out of your way. And then when you get to the bottom of it, you hit the button and it'll raise back up for you to be able to pedal again. So when you set that dropper post up, you want to make sure it's set to roughly the same height as you would a traditional seat post. You're just going to need to make sure that you have it at its proper insertion amount into the frame of the bike. But you still want to be having that seat post at the point where your legs are close to full extension, but not locking out. The next thing that you have on a bike like this is the suspension system is going to be just more complex. You've got more settings that you can adjust, and because it's a full suspension, meaning there is suspension in the front and the back, you're going to be adjusting two different suspension systems. So these also have baseline recommendations from the manufacturers. So we recommend you take into account the weight your total weight when you're riding, set the air pressure to that recommended setting, confirm that it is going to be placing you at what is known as sag, which is when you are on the bike that the suspension is sagging about 30%. And then you'll want to go ride and you make adjustments from there. It's important to not just do it once and never look at it again. You want to be making adjustments based off how that bike is feeling under you. If the bike feels too soft, too firm, it feels like a pogo stick under you, all those things have different adjustments that you can make to rectify that situation. So the starting point though is going to be that putting in your appropriate air pressure and then going for a ride to check it out. The last adjustment that you're going to want to make on these bikes is the pressure in your tires. This is a real easy one to forget, but before you go out and ride, every single time you want to make sure that you are airing your tires to the appropriate level. So what is that? If you have a bike that has tubes in the tires, you're going to need to run a little bit firmer air pressure. So on a mountain bike, we generally recommend about 35 PSI if you have tubes. Now, if you weigh a little bit less, you can bring that air pressure down a little bit. If you weigh a little bit more, you might want to bump that up a little bit. But what that's going to do, having a little bit more air pressure, is going to help prevent you getting flats when you're on the trail from rocks causing that tire to compress and pinch the tube. If you have too little air pressure in those tires, it's going to cause you to get a flat that's called a pinch flat, where that tube gets pinched within the tire. Now, if you have a bike that has a tubeless tire system on it, that's going to enable you to run a little bit lower air pressure. And so, again, depending upon the factors that come into play with the trail you're riding, how much you weigh, the type of tire that you're riding, you may make adjustments, but we recommend people typically start in the 23 to 25 PSI range, and then make adjustments from there based off how the bike feels to them. Again, everything we recommend is going to be more of a basic sort of initial setup. The important thing is the bike feels comfortable to you, and so if you feel like you need to make a tweak here or there in terms of how that bike is set up, give it a try. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. Ultimately, you want to feel comfortable when you're on the trail, and then you'll have a good time. And you'll do more riding. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed or have your own take on some of these things, drop a comment below. If you want to see some more content from Pakmule, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thanks for watching with us. Keep the rubber side down. We'll see you on the trail.